from the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight with Ryan Edwards and Steve Atwater.
All right, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight. We're breaking down the Broncos' performance against the Rams as well as what they did over the course of the entire preseason. And to help me do that, the one and only Steve Atwater. What up, Steve?
What up, R. Edwards?
It's good to have you here, man.
Good to have you, man. Good to be here.
It is good to be here. The Broncos go 3-0 in the preseason. The record doesn't necessarily matter. It's more about how they performed, how they got there. But the defense, not giving up a touchdown through the entirety of the preseason.
How many times has that been done?
I mean, I can't think very many.
We got to check it out.
It's a bit of a random thing, right? Because there are so many circumstances and scenarios, especially when you get late in the game. Like they had shots there at the very end to potentially get a touchdown, and then all of a sudden we say, well, they gave up one touchdown over the course of preseason, which would still be very impressive. Especially when you get to the second and third team, you get late in the game. There's all sorts of reasons why that could happen. But the fact that it didn't, what does that mean to you?
Well, it means that the guys knew the defense and that they were playing sound defense throughout the game, first, second, and third teams. Because, like I said, there are always opportunities to score. There can be mismatches and the whole 9 yards. But, hey, they were able to hold strong and not give up a touchdown. And now, field goals, they weren't that bad. They gave up some plays. But overall, I thought they played very solid defense throughout the entire preseason.
Certainly. And there's, I think, an overall vibe you get from the team is they look ready to play. I'd say offense and defense. Certainly there are things to clean up. Special teams, I think, is the biggest one. We'll get to that here in a second. But, I mean, you outscored your opponents 80-21 over the course of the entire preseason. You played your starters maybe a little bit more than your opponents, so you should be outscoring them. That would be the ideal.
Facts.
Of course, the flip of that, if they weren't outscoring their opponents, that would be a significant red flag. So I come away with that. The defense, penalties. They had a total of 7 penalties for 75 yards through all 3 games, including the second game, which had 0 penalties at all. The third game, 2 for 20, you had a 15-yarder on Alexander Johnson. You didn't have another penalty. It was a 5-yard defensive holding until under the 2-minute warning of the fourth quarter. That is significant for me, and that, again, kind of goes back to where I feel like this team is ready to go.
Yeah, and I don't know that we had a ton of penalties throughout the entire season last year. We did have, obviously we had some, but I just don't recall us having a plethora of penalties. So
nice use of plethora.
Yeah, I think that Coach Fangio stresses to the team. He's been doing that from day one. That we can't make those kind of mistakes. Can't have the death by 1,000 cuts and having a bunch of penalties here and there, 5 yards here, 15 yards here. Pass interference here, those kill you. And that says a lot about the coaching and really about the players, taking it to heart, taking the coaching to heart and not making those mistakes that end up hurting the team, not necessarily right on that one play, but as they add up throughout the game and end up hurting you over the course of the season.
Well, as we acknowledge most of the time going into the preseason, it's usually heavily officiated, intentionally heavily officiated, because they want to get the refs kind of back into.
It wouldn't have officiated this year. I don't think so.
It didn't feel like it. Although I was watching the game last night with the Falcons, and that game was very heavily officiated.
Okay.
So I guess maybe it's a little bit of a luck of the draw, but you're right. I mean, actually, I did some research last year during the season because I noticed the same thing. And yeah, under Vic Fangio, the Broncos have been one of the top third, if not top 10 in the league in penalties against since he got here. So it is something that he obviously harps on. And you know what? For the special teams, that would be one way it would show up in, because usually you have back end of roster guys and third string guys there.
Yeah. No, you're right. More like, you think more like late hits, or what kind of penalty you think about on special teams?
Well, holding obviously is one, but so for blocking the back, holding, some of those are pretty easy to happen. So for all the frustrations with special teams and definitely the tackling, taking better angles, noticed a couple of times, especially with some of the rookies taking some bad angles in this last game, especially on kickoff, because actually punt return coverage was pretty good. Kickoff return was where they had the problem so far. You're not having the penalties that are backbreaking in that too.
Yeah.
And then again, on your side, when you are on punt return, you are on kick return, you're not having penalties there either. So as frustrating as it's been, then that's one of the things that the Broncos absolutely can't afford to be bad at this year. They cannot be bad at special teams. That's not something we're noticing early.
You're right. And that's a good thing that we aren't having the penalties in addition to the play that's not up to par. And hey, the guys really they just gotta want it, man, and they gotta practice better. They gotta practice having those good habits, practice keeping outside leverage to make sure, hey, if you got contained, you can't let anybody get outside of you. Mm-hmm. And coaches can teach little league guys how to do it. I know at the NFL level we can do that, especially with the speed that the receivers have, the runners have. We got to have a ton of respect for those guys, and you can't get your legs crossed over and get in a bad position. You got to make sure you keep contained. And I think that's what's hurt us more than anything else. And guys, keeping their distance in proportion to the other guys too.
Definitely. Okay, so let's go to the offense. Again, we're kind of taking a little bit more of a macro view of preseason, but I would like in a moment to talk about just how the offense has performed. The first team offense did 3 drives. They had 3 drives out there with Teddy Bridgewater in the first team offense. A little bit of a sluggish start, not so much from Melvin Gordon. Thought he looked good right away, but a little bit of a sluggish start, getting on the same page. I noticed that that Teddy Bridgewater, there was an intent to target players that hadn't had preseason action. Cortland Sutton, Albert Okwuegbunam, Tim Patrick, and Melvin Gordon. They accounted for 9 of Teddy Bridgewater's 11 targets on those 3 drives. And that says something about just trying to get them involved. At least that does to me.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that was really the whole purpose of them playing, is to not only get out there and throw some blocks and just be in the game, but to actually get the ball in their hands and see how they feel when they're getting tackled, going to the ground, all those things that they really haven't done a lot of in training camp. They got a chance to do it in the game, and I'm glad that it was important to Teddy to get those guys actively in the game and getting the ball to them, and they showed up and they played well.
Cortland Sutton especially, a nice couple of catches there in that final drive. Albert Okwuegbunam looked pretty good, and that's kind of what you really ultimately want. And like I said, Melvin Gordon is there too. Tim Patrick might take a little bit longer, but again, considering the depth
he looked pretty good though. I mean, he did a good job blocking. He looked solid. He looked like he knew what he was doing. Well, we know he knows what he's doing.
Right.
But he looked good. He looked good. And I'm sure as the season goes on, he'll get his share of targets. All the guys will get their share of targets. We didn't see Jerry Jeudy as much. But, hey, Jeudy, you're going to get your time, man. It's coming. It's coming. It's a couple of weeks. We'll be here before you know it.
Keep in mind, KJ Hamler didn't play in the game, who's obviously shown a nice connection with Teddy. Noah Fant didn't play in the game. So, I mean, you were missing a couple of guys. I'm not trying to make excuses because people were upset about the performance of the offense early on. I'm saying that there's some context in this.
Yeah, and like you said, with Teddy not necessarily going through the progression that he would normally, he said, all right, I'm going to try to force it, get these guys involved in the game plan. And I think it was good. Early on, we were up in the press box. Everybody was going crazy. Oh, man, he had to complete any passes. Is this going to be a competition? No, the decision's been made now. Teddy's the starting quarterback. Calm down. Everything's going to be fine.
Yeah, and that's – we'll see if it's going to be fine, but I'll say that I didn't come out of it concerned because – once you put the context in there. And he even said after in the postgame, yes, I was intentionally targeting these players to get them some run. Mm-hmm. I think you go, okay, it's going to be fine because we know those players can play. They just need some time on the field. So there were some comments from people, before we get to the defense, there were some comments from people saying, well, you've had that time during training camp, but it is a little different in the game, isn't
absolutely.
it?
Oh, absolutely. Because the guys wanted to play in the game, so you know that it's something different because they've been practicing all training camp. But they look forward to suiting it up, getting the adrenaline going, and then actually having contact with guys who they know are trying to, they're trying to tackle them and they're not taking it easy when they're tackling them. They're trying to get them to the ground, and they wanted to see how that felt. And they looked really good. I was super surprised with Albert when he tried to leap over a guy.
I know.
But, man, that guy, he's impressive to me.
Very impressive. All right, so let's talk about more impressive things. Go to the defensive side of the ball. Von Miller looked really good.
Yeah, it looked great. Didn't look like he didn't have any hitches. I thought he had a sack there at one point, but it was, I think, a 1 or 2 yard.
Well, there was a TFL in there, and then, he had a chance at a sack. The quarterback got rid of the ball very fast. But, he looked great. His speed looked great. He didn't look like he was really slowed up by anything. Bradley Chubb was out there. It was just kind of good to see what the starting defense. Now, again, people may be overreacting a little bit. The Rams were able to move the ball. And this isn't Matthew Stafford out there and Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. This was backups. So what does that mean to you at all?
Well, nothing, because you look at the film and, it was a nice little game plan they had. And the quarterback, he was shifty. He was able to get out of some sticky situations, had good speed there. But I thought we still had a real solid defensive game plan. And the guys, they played well. I can't point to one guy on the defense at all. He played poorly. And because of this, we got some issues that, we need to be worried about going into week 1 against the Giants. I feel confident that we're going to ball out.
It was also interesting to me because this is really the first time Vic Fangio has had what he believes is probably the most of his starting caliber players out there, because Vaughn wasn't obviously able to play against Seattle. And I wanted to see how Vic Fangio approached defensive play calling, because remember last year, because he was missing so many guys, he would call more blitzes. He was trying to create pressure as a result of the fact that he just didn't have his normal guys. Well, this year, at least in that game, he was just sending 3 or 4 sometimes up front.
He sent 5 some too.
But then as things went on, he got sort of tired. All right, this is enough. And then that Josie Jewell sack that came was 6 guys. So I wanted to see how he was going to vary that up. But again, we know for a fact with Vic Fangio that what he'd like to do is be able to send 4 guys and have everybody else back for opportunities to get turnovers. But the ability to vary it, the ability to change it up a little bit because you have the talent out there is very important. Yeah,
and I know that, hey, the edge rushers, the inside linebackers, they're going to and the D linemen, they're going to benefit from having, cornerbacks that can cover. I mean, really good in man-to-man. I looked at both Kyle Fuller and Ronald Darby out on the outside. Man, they were holding it down out there. They had a lot of cover 1 played, and they did a great job of covering their guys all over the field, coming up on the tackle, being physical. So that helps everybody out. Now, hey, the whole playbook is available. You can blitz on first down if you want to. You can play cover 1 and just send 5, or you can, drop back and play zone coverage because, hey, we got the corners that can do everything, and they understand the defense as veterans.
Definitely. All right, well, tomorrow we'll do a little bit more on the 53-man roster as some of those decisions are being made right now. For Steve Atwater, I'm Ryan Edwards. Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight.